You might be wondering just how freaky Emerald Fennell's Wuthering Heights, in quotation marks, starring Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi will be. Is it too much or just the right amount for a Valentine's Day movie night? For the book girlies with a Wattpad account, you'll be served here, even though, you know, they could go further, but your boyfriend still might prefer to go see that animated basketball movie with animals called goats. Maybe it makes an interesting double feature, but definitely end on Wuthering Heights, because with how heated it gets, you might want to skip dessert. For those looking for a faithful text-to-screen adaptation of Emily Bronte's novel from 1847, then you'll get about half of that story, like most of the films that stop about halfway through the novel. This version cuts out Hindley's character entirely to leave more space for Kathy and Heathcliff. Instead of holding space, though, I think these two lovebirds are probably choking space more than anything else. Hong Chow as Nally Dean is also way less of a narrating voice in this story, but she does get to do a few different things that I'll touch on in a second. But at least this version really showcases that these two lovers are actually quite insufferable and over the top, while still making, you know, you as an audience member quite giddy at the potential of an intimate scene between them arising. If you've seen other films by Emerald Fennell, then you know that she likes to indulge in these unhinged moments. Suggestive close-up shots of fingers running through a variety of liquids, licking stuff. Although there's nothing as outrageous as the bathtub scene in Saltburn, there's just Elordi's presence as Heathcliff, who is supposed to be a brute, and well, he really almost effortlessly carries that swagger. I wonder how much of his creepy behavior is also romanticized and indulged just because of how hot he is in the film, but that's also the sort of the main thing that I took away from the film. It's fun to root for two characters ending up together, even though I think they're both quite despicable. The parts that are directly lifted from the novel, like Catherine confiding in Nellie about her marrying for money and status over love, twists Nellie's role in the movie from more of an observer into one that has also her own interest at heart, which I found quite an interesting change. Alison Oliver's Isabella Linton is basically doing the Florence Pugh in Little Women, but turned kind of sexual, if that makes sense. Like she's talking with like a baby voice and is supposed to be, I guess, caught up in books but not really down to reality, and just overindulging and over romanticizing maybe things that aren't that great for her. There's a turn with her character that comes the closest to going, you know, a bit too far with it, and I expect this scene to make a lot of people nervously laugh in the cinema. It sort of fills in the blanks of what maybe the original novel wouldn't have had on the page, because sex wouldn't take place there. Maybe it would take place in between the margins, but correct me if I'm wrong. I read this book, I literally have it right here, but I'm not too familiar with literary fiction of the 19th century. But obviously showing how these characters behave at their most passionate, sexual, and also frankly horniest gives you a lot of insight in who they are and what they're actually capable of. The film reportedly also had a budget of $80 million, and I can say that it really shows. The sets, the production design, the costumes, the look, everything is quite well done. And cinematographer Linus Sandgren, who has also shot La La Land, Babylon, and Fennell's last film Saltburn, is back and shows that he knows what he's doing. And by the way, he's also shooting the upcoming Dune Messiah. I quite enjoy House featuring John Cale. That track plays as part of like the promotion of the film and a lot of, I believe, the trailers, but it's also featured in the movie, and I think his voice is very fitting for the feeling this movie is overall going for. It's quite theatrical at times, like it's over dramatic, incredibly indulgent in these obsessions of the two, so set on being these doomed lovers. They're incredibly extra, and Margot Robbie fits the role quite well, I'd say. Her child actor counterpart basically introduces her as someone whose first instinct is to cry and see herself as a victim of her surroundings, whilst putting that into contrast with the rather dull life that other people are living around her. She's introduced to be a lot, and that sort of runs through the whole film. But it's not like she is that one-noted. At the same time, this isn't a film about how much rich people suck or how money corrupts her. She doesn't really lose touch with herself in that way. There's another character that has an expanded role from the novel, played by Ewan Mitchell, that fills in this sort of commentary in a bit, but he only has like 1 or 2 scenes about that. I think it goes without saying that Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi both stun in this film. They're gorgeous, and I appreciate how the focus is on both of them, to be desired, even though it's apparent that it's very much Elordi as Heathcliff that everyone is infatuated by in the story, like literally swooning over him. So Margot's tweet about her private screening of the film that had a room full of women frothing for him doesn't seem far-fetched at all. I totally believe that. At the core, this is a long build-up for eventual release. I'm really sorry, I can't say it any other way. That's what the story is. But because it is so upfront about what it is, I think I was actually quite positively surprised by the film. I went in expecting maybe some unfit changes for the film to be made, or some unnecessary big swings and twists to really make this story her own, but it really wasn't that. It really was just all it was advertised. There's a song on the soundtrack called Everything is Romantic by Charlie XCX, and that's sort of what this movie is as well. Ultimately, it's all confession of love. So one-noted and single-minded that it's questionable what these characters are apart from their longing. But that's how I read much of the novel as well. It's like that sort of obsession that ultimately leads you down a very dangerous path for yourself to ultimately become a quite bad person and feeling like you're doing it in service of the person you love the most. Everything is romantic, I guess, even though to the detriment of everyone else around you. Emerald Fennell definitely likes to focus on scenes of characters spying on others doing sexual things, and there's a scene in this movie where Kathy's mouth gets covered by Heathcliff's hand that almost made me audibly gasp. I get everyone who's losing their shit over Jacob Elordi. Really, I'm turning red right now. I hope you have a good time at the cinema, and remember to check your buttons before you leave the theater. I'm giving Wuthering Heights a 7 out of 10. On my podcast, Quiet on Set, I'll go into more details discussing the spoilers and the differences from the novel, as well as the numerous other adaptations of the story, including the Japanese version from 1988, the one from William Wilder starring Laurence Olivier from 1939, the one with Ralph Fiennes and Juliette Binoche from 1992, the Andrea Arnold one from 2011, and the 2-episode miniseries with Tom Hardy and Andrew Lincoln from 2009, and maybe even some other ones. So like, subscribe, and I'll see you at the movies.